My name is Carol Mitten, and I'm the city administrator for Urbana. I've only been here for a few months, so I might not have met you all yet. I'm just going to be the MC for the open house we have this evening, and I'd like to start by thanking you all for coming out. We're very interested in the comments that you have to help inform the design. I want to start out by acknowledging the attendance of some of our council members. Mary Alice Wu just coming in. We have Dennis Roberts. We have Eric Jacobson. We have Jared Miller. And of course, we have the mayor. Anybody else that I missed? It's important for me to point this out because this was not a properly noticed meeting in terms of the Open Meetings Act, so please don't expect any of your council members to be engaging in any kind of public policy discussion with you tonight because that would be prohibited by the Open Meetings Act. I'd also like to acknowledge Chris Saunders from Green Street Realty, and when he comes up to make his presentation, maybe he can introduce the folks on his team to us. Okay, so tonight we're going to start off with a few brief presentations because we want to devote most of our time to hearing from you. But we're going to, we have three goals that we want to accomplish tonight. One is to give you information about the project to the extent that you still have questions. The other is to answer specific questions that you have, and then we'd also like to receive comments from you. We'll have three speakers, as I said, who'll make brief presentations, and then we'll have the Q&A. We will transition to the bus if you'd like to go and see one of the projects that's going to be on tour tonight. We're going to start transitioning to the bus around 7:45 so that we can start that promptly at 8. We'd like you to use the question and answer period for actual questions. We're looking to collect your comments on comment forms that I think are in the back of the room. We are going to put you on a clock for that just to make sure that we get everybody in, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. So, and I would just hasten to add that in order to actually act on the comments we've received, we're putting a deadline of October 31st on the comments so that the architect can get to work and try to capture some of what we've heard from you. So tonight we're going to start with the mayor. She'll give some information about the importance of this project to downtown Urbana, and then Brandon Boyes, our economic development manager, will give some background on this site and our previous efforts to look for some redevelopment, and then we'll have Chris Saunders actually present the design to you all. So with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thanks, Carol, and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for coming. As Carol noted, our job mainly tonight is to listen to you and try to get as many questions answered that you have, and I know that you have a lot. So we're going to get started. I wanted to just provide a bit of framework for this discussion, some high-level information, and then I'll turn it over to Brandon Boyes, who'll give some background of how we got to the point we're at, and then Chris will give the details of this project. So this is the first new proposal for new residential construction in downtown Urbana in 13 years. The last thing built in downtown Urbana was the Stratford Residence down on Race Street, and that was opened in 2005. So this is a milestone for the city. For that reason alone, we are turning a corner in terms of getting people interested in investing in Urbana, and this is a very important step that we're taking here. This is the third time that an RFP, a request for proposal, was issued. Two other initiatives or two other efforts were not successful. So we're hoping the third time is a charm, and with your help and input, I think it will be. So I'm looking forward to that. The city invested in this site, purchased the property, the buildings on the site over the course of a couple of years. We have invested a significant amount of money in the site. That was done 7 or 8 years ago. The reason being this site was considered to be a very key parcel in our downtown, and it's in our TIF district as well as in our enterprise zone. So we've held the site for several years. It's a key site for many reasons. It's very close to major employers, Carle Hospital, the University of Illinois, the county government. Our population increases by about 15,000 people during the day net. We have a lot of people coming into Urbana to work. And another goal, one of our goals, is why not get some of those people who are coming into work in Urbana every day to live in Urbana every day. So we have a 24/7 presence of people, more people in our downtown. So that's another a really major factor here. Whenever I talk about anything with the city, whether it's within my staff or within the public, I always like to start with the financial framework that we're operating in. The last two budgets that we passed were intended to build a foundation for the future. And the reason for that is we have to address some very serious financial challenges in Urbana. So while we are focusing on growth and development and sustainable growth and development, we are also addressing in a systematic and disciplined way our financial challenges. One of the biggest challenges we face is our structural budget deficit in the general operating fund. That's the fund that pays the bills, that provides the programs and services that you all count on. We're trying to close a $2.5 million gap. We got to start on that in this year, but in order to do that, we need to make sure that our revenues are keeping pace with our expenses, and they haven't been to date. So we're addressing that, again, in a systematic way, and it's going to take several years. We need to restore funding for police and fire pensions. For several years, they were not funded at adequate levels, and we need to close that gap. We've restored funding at the proper levels now, and that's going to take several years to catch up on that. And we need to rebuild city reserves. They were not being maintained at the minimum levels required by our own financial guidelines. So we're addressing that as well. And then we're looking this year at developing a plan for some long-term infrastructure, addressing our long-term infrastructure maintenance needs. I don't have to tell you all, if you live anywhere in Urbana, that our streets need attention. Some of you are dealing with chip and seal in your neighborhoods. Some of you, we're all dealing with potholes, and we're all driving on streets and looking at other infrastructure that really needs work. So we need to figure out a way to address our long-term infrastructure maintenance. So that's the overall financial framework, which makes projects like this and others that are coming our way extremely important in planning for our financial future. Another framework informing this whole project is our 2012 downtown plan, which really was an excellent plan. It contained a number of goals. It's available online, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but some of the major goals were strengthening economic activity, focusing on urban infill style development, which this project is. We want to attract more residents in downtown Urbana and visitors. We want to have engaging public spaces and streetscapes, improving mobility through downtown, to downtown, and around downtown, preserving and celebrating our historic architecture and civic buildings, and doing what we can to reduce the environmental impact of our activities. And we will work to make sure that this project reflects those goals as well. So, where we are today is we have signed a letter of intent with Green Street Realty, and we're looking forward to working with this company. The next step in this is to develop a negotiated development agreement where we actually work out a lot of the details of this whole project. Part of the letter of intent states that we'll work to resolve any issues that arise during the course of negotiations. We're now at the stage of taking comment on the preliminary project design, which you all have seen, and which we want to hear from you tonight, and which we'll be discussing tonight. That we're now at this point in this whole process. And then there will be a final design proposed in the future. So that's where we are tonight. We're at the point of taking design. We're here to listen and to try to get as many questions answered as we can. So thank you again very much for coming. And I'll turn this over to Brandon Boyes, our Economic Development Manager.
Thank you, Mayor Marlin, and thank you again to everyone for coming out tonight. The mayor introduced the site at 200 Vine. It's a full city block. And here's an image that we used in our most recent RFP that shows the proximity of the site to the University of Illinois and Carle Foundation Hospital. One of the challenges we face when we reach out to developers is we often have to tell folks about our community and why it's great. And the proximity to employers and the proximity to services in downtown has been a key message that's resonated not only with developers from out of town, but from Green Street Realty as well. I'll work forward through the history of some of the prior RFPs for the site, but I just wanted to start by describing just the conditions on the site. There's an abandoned commercial property there that will require demolition. There is some environmental contamination that needs to be cleaned up. The property is zoned B4, which is our most permissive business zoning in the city of Urbana, and is what is you'll find throughout most of downtown Urbana. And there's also some utility lines on the location that are going to need to be relocated. So those all pose some costs in the development process. In 2011, the city issued a request for proposals for the site for the first time. That was shortly after the site was fully assembled. The response the city received was the Metro Center. This was from a local architect. It was a 7-story building with a mix of retail, office, and residential. In this image, it was also proposed as a location for a Trader Joe's. It was completely site-filling. It featured underground parking, and it was not economically feasible either. In 2015, the city moved away from that initial relationship with the former developer who'd proposed the Metro Center and hired an out-of-town broker, CBRE, out of Indianapolis. And we worked with them to try to attract new folks to our community. I kind of alluded this earlier, but the main focus was on kind of being a Big Ten town. And ultimately, in retrospect, we feel like that approach kind of fell flat because it's sort of a cartoonish image of our community if you really only think of us through the lens of the university. Urbana is a lot more than that. And we're successful in attracting I got a little ahead there, didn't I? We were successful in attracting a development partner, TWG Development, and in working with them, the initial product they proposed was this 4 to 5 story, 190-unit apartment building that would have included underground parking and about 5,000 square feet of commercial, a relatively small portion of the total building. We had a number of meetings with the neighborhood. We went to Indianapolis to tour similar properties, and ultimately the developer declined to proceed with this project. And we're not confident that it was a great fit for the neighborhood either. There were definitely many concerns raised about density and scale of this project in relation to the East Urbana neighborhood in particular, but also some questions raised about what is really desirable for the mix of residents that we would expect to be at this facility. So when the city reissued the RFP in 200 Vine without the help of a broker, the focus was on medium to high density residential. We specifically introduced the concept of townhomes into the RFP, and we were focusing on, we'd been talking to a lot of developers and residents at this point, and we knew we were going to be focusing on resident groups of empty nesters, young professionals, small families, and graduate students. And that's a lot of the folks you find renting in the Stratford Apartments, for example, which the mayor mentioned was the last residential new construction in our downtown 13 years ago. There were 7 qualified developers who expressed interest in this site. Mayor and staff had over 50 contacts with those top 7 leads. Only 2 submitted for the project, and we're excited to announce that Green Street is the selected developer for the project, as demonstrated in the letter of intent. The project, which I'll allow Chris Saunders of Green Street to go into a lot of detail on, but just recall the history of the proposals: 7 stories, mixed use, fully site filling, 4 to 5 stories, predominantly high density residential with only 5,000 square feet of commercial, also structured parking. Neither of those ended up being financially feasible for the private party. And the proposal that's before us today, which is 2 and 3 story townhomes, that's less height, less mass, less density, and fewer incentives requested by the developer, and we believe key appeal to the renter groups that we described before: small families, young professionals, graduate students, and empty nesters. So I'll turn it over to Chris. Okay, thank you.
Josh run our, okay, can do with that, and it might be too confusing. Hello? Okay. I don't know if he's got us up there yet. Yeah, I wanted to just tell a little bit about myself and our company. My name is Chris Saunders. I'm the president of Green Street Realty. We are just down the street on the corner of Green and Neal in Champaign. I am an Urbana resident. Have lived in Urbana now for a couple of years. Lived in Urbana in college as well, so familiar with the community. Excited to get a chance to do a project in my backyard. We've been doing a lot of development as a company here locally, and this is an exciting opportunity. I've obviously followed it closely over the years as the different projects have been presented, but this I felt like was a chance for us in our kind of evolution of our company to get something in the downtown Urbana area, which we don't have a lot of product down here right now. We do get a lot of demand from potential residents looking to be in downtown Urbana. Green Street Realty currently has properties in several different markets. Most of our portfolio is here. We have properties in Bloomington Normal, mostly student housing, in fact, all student housing, Charleston, Decatur, and then Champaign, Urbana. Right now we have 5,000 residents that live in our apartments in Champaign and Urbana. Pretty good mix of really everything across the board, from new buildings we've built ground up, from existing structures, single-family homes, apartment buildings, commercial buildings. We've got an industrial building. We've got office space. We've kind of got a full gamut of property. Kind of the reason we were really interested in this project is we don't have really much new product off campus and in Urbana. So this looked like a great opportunity with a vacant lot and desire by the city to get residents in and around the core of the downtown area that I know has been growing and doing well and thriving. And I think you need people close by to make it even more viable and continue to grow. And I think this is an option that brings in a project that's not super dense like some of the other ones that were proposed, and makes it feel like more of a residential development. And that really was kind of where we started with this, with the idea that this needs to be very residential. It doesn't need to be a campus-type building. And that was where we came up with the idea of the townhomes. It was also mentioned in the RFP as a desired goal. I don't see a lot of construction in the market right now with this kind of townhome development. So it was something that we kind of were interested in pursuing, and really to give you a little background on the project, a little bit more about us too. We do build and construct all our own projects. We've got another arm of our company called Sub 4 Development, which is the construction side. Green Street's the leasing side. So we have members of staff here from both of those tonight. The leasing side that hears it from all the residents and what people are looking for, and the construction side that handles really all the ground up construction. And obviously, if you've lived in the community, you know that our market is very similar to a lot of other markets, especially these Big Ten kind of campus town markets where there's been a lot of growth, especially in the student housing development world over the last 5 years. We certainly have been a part of that. We think, though, that there's not been near as much residential development, and there's an opportunity as the student housing thing kind of comes to an end here, in our opinion. There won't be all these huge projects continuing to go up. We feel like a smaller, more neighborhood type off-campus project's a good fit. We like I said, we like a lot of things about this. The biggest thing we like is the proximity to downtown Urbana, and really the option for your residents to be able to simply never leave, maybe take bus, walk, be able to go to grocery stores, restaurants, the mall across the street, to work even, and it's just a great opportunity without adding a new spot to something that's currently vacant. So, couple things. I'll kind of start with a slideshow that we put together, just kind of highlighting a few things about the development itself. This is currently, as we've mentioned, this is just a proposal. It's a letter of intent. This is really the first step in the process, was going to be all along. We were going to have a neighborhood meeting. First time we met with the city of Urbana, the goal was to get something down, a concept at least, whether those are the finishes we use or the colors or anything. It's really just the idea, are townhomes what people want? or do we want a standard building? Those are things we went through. We feel on the leasing side, with our knowledge of the market, the townhouses would really, really do well here. And kind of some highlights on those. It's a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms. So they're 2 bedroom, 2 bath, I believe 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath right now as we have it proposed. 19 of the 42 units, which is kind of unique, have garages, drive-under garages underneath. So you can not only park in a garage, but if you've got 2 vehicles, you can park right behind it in your own kind of defined space, very similar to a condo-type development or a single-family residence development. 28 surface spots that are all interior on the project. So our idea was to kind of create a community here and not have cars, a shortage of parking where cars are parked all over the streets and clogging up residential visitor spaces and things like that. So we like the idea. We think I think it's a total of 66 parking spaces when you count the garages and the parking behind the garage and then the residential, the open space parking in the middle. The units that we're building here are quite larger than what we build on campus. Later tonight we're going to do a tour of 809 West Nevada, corner of Nevada and Lincoln, that is a specific student-built property. I think you'll find that those units are a lot tighter than these. They're about 1,100 square feet, and they definitely don't have the space that these will. These will definitely feel more like a single-family residence with the size of them. So they're much larger than we've built in the past, and I think it's a better fit for your off-campus housing versus the student housing. Just to give you an example, we're doing a project at the Carleton Fields in West Champaign. About $35 million worth of construction out there on 6 buildings. 2 of them are going up now. Those units are 2 bed, 2 bath, and range around 1,100 square feet. So these are 4 to 5 to even 600 square feet larger than those. The proposed building materials at this point are pretty open. We want to do a mix of brick and stone, and we plan on we've been using what's called an LP Smart Side material, which is, if you're familiar with Hardy board siding, which is a fiber cement board siding, this is a wood product. It looks really sharp. We put it on the back of 809 Nevada. If you're there tonight, if it's bright enough out, you should be able to see it. But it's a great product. It lasts. It doesn't fade. It's got great warranties. It's easy to install, and it's a much better product than vinyl siding. We don't intend this to be vinyl siding. That was one of our, the goals of the city, is to make sure, the products we're using are solid products, and we agree. We had no complaints there because we want the same goal. We want something that's going to last. We do plan on keeping this, and it's something we're going to manage and run for a long time to come. So it doesn't benefit us to do anything but try to get the best product out there. Of course, when I say that, we're always fighting, rising interest rates, rising construction costs. There's now something called tariffs out there. Everything is going up in the construction world on cost, even from a year ago. We're looking at. We've done a lot of podiums construction with steel. That's went up 30 or 40%. Flooring's going up 25%. Just building materials in general are going up considerably. So we're always fighting level of finishes and what we want and what we can afford, and still make the project, financially viable. It's got to check the boxes at the end. You got to be able to lease it for a certain amount, and that's a fixed amount. We know in the market what we can get away with leasing a property over here or another part of the market. If our costs are so high, we won't be able to get a loan, the appraisals won't work out. So there is a number we're working with. Obviously, it helps to get some benefits. Part of the TIF makes a big difference. Land typically makes up about 10% of our costs. So when this project was put out in the TIF and said that it would allow us to, have the land as part of the development, it does help. It's certainly not the entire thing to make or break it, but it certainly helps having that. It allows us to do better finishes, higher quality, larger units, things that we may not be able to do if we go and spend, for example, on campus, we're spending anywhere from $100 to even $125 a square foot for a single parcel of land. So we just spent $1 million on an 8,000 square foot parcel on Green Street. So just to give you perspective, that's going to be an $8 million building. About 10% of that is land costs. So this certainly helps. We are taking advantage on this project of the Think Urbana program in our initial design. The Think Urbana program allows anyone to get a tax benefit if they build a single-family home, a duplex, or a townhouse-style development like this. So certainly it was a factor. However, I think in the back of our minds, had that benefit not been there, we were still interested in the townhouse-style development. We just think it's the right fit and something that we can get away with leasing, and it's not so dense that we're going to have empty apartments. Our goal is to have this full, healthy, pre-leased year after year, and something we can kind of just keep the momentum rolling on it, and then keep the rent rates at something that's still affordable for new construction. This is kind of a little bit about our company, kind of our 5-year timeline, including our 2019 projects. We did slide this in. When we put costs together on this, we just put a floor of $5 million. We think this is more like a $6 or $7 million project, all in, but it won't be any less than $5 million. I think it's going to probably be in that 6 and 7 range. So we've obviously ramped up our construction. We started the construction site ourselves 5 years ago. We did about $8 million of projects in 2015. You can see that it's ramped up pretty considerably. We've invested with this batch of projects. We're starting about $152 million in new construction in the market, and that really is a variety of really everything. And as I go through this, I'll kind of go ahead here to some of the projects that we currently have done. This is just a sampling of some of those. So this was our 809 Nevada project that we did, just finished this year, corner of Nevada and Lincoln. It's student housing. I think it came out very nice. We ended up doing this as a much smaller, scaled-down version than our original design. We originally had this out there as a 5-story building, had a couple different, similar to this. We went to meetings, got feedback, and ended up landing with this, and we're very happy with it. We've excited about the project, excited to have it there. Hopefully everybody thinks it fits in, but we've really had a lot of success on the leasing side too. Tenants have really been a popular building to start the leasing season off this year, and we were able to fill last year really all of the units. We had one unit that did not fill, and we've kind of left that as a model unit that we'll show tonight. Other developments, this is the Carl at the Fields. This is kind of a first look at a couple of our buildings. We're currently doing on the right-hand side, the 2 buildings there, which are a mixed-use development. There's 28 apartments in each building and about 12,500 square feet of retail on the bottom. Then there's the hotel in the middle there, the Hampton Inn, that is not our project. But then there's our phase 2 projects that we're starting right now, which are another 60 apartments and some retail on the bottom. So we're going to have kind of a town center feel out there. It'll have residential and retail on the bottom. And again, it goes back to kind of this type of project too. It's very walkable. We think people like this idea of being able to live, work, eat. We have a hair salon, we have a Verizon, we have Health Alliance going in, we have El Toro going in, we have a bar and restaurant going in. We've got a bunch of different other options too. So the retail and having the apartments there, I think, is going to be very attractive moving forward in the future. These are 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. Couple buildings we built across from the Champaign Library would be a similar scale to this. This is 78 total apartments. They're 3-story buildings. They're 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. We believe as a company that we'll attract a lot of the same type of residents we attract here, which is a mixture of young professionals. We've got empty nesters. We've got graduate students. It's not a undergraduate property, and very similar. And I think it plays off well when people are looking at the market, because we have people that want to be specifically near downtown Urbana, and we just don't have a great option that's newer. Couple projects we did in University Avenue. One on the right, 501, we did a couple years ago. We just finished the 209 University project just a couple months ago, and that's got leased up now, and we've got some retail on the bottom of that site as well. Kind of 2 mixed-use projects. Something we considered for this property was mixed use. Do we do what everybody's doing, put a podium up, put some retail on the bottom, and put some apartments above? And I think our general consensus was, we feel like that's going to take away from what, the downtown. Having more and more commercial space to lease is maybe not, or office space is maybe what needed at this point, not needed. And we felt residential would be more of a value for the downtown business owners and the people that are, running businesses in downtown Urbana. Retail developments, we've also diversified and done some straight up retail developments. We've got a couple going up. We have one just finished on North Prospect. We've got OSF moved in as one of our tenants. Across the street in the AMC Theater parking lot, we did a building a couple years ago that is straight retail. Just give you an idea. I will want to go back to this as well. When I say University Avenue developments, we do have a project planned to do in Urbana on the corner of Harvey Street and University Avenue, where the Nero Giros site is at. And we ended up last year tabling it because we were able to pick up an additional property next to that to get the entire corner from the University of Illinois Foundation. So now we have a better site. We're working on a new plan to come back with that plan here soon and start that construction this next fall. So just to give you an update on University Avenue.
Hey, Chris.
Yes.
I'm sorry. Would you mind going back and
Yeah.
I really appreciate the introduction to all your
Yep.
different projects.
Sure.
But I think, rather than go too long on this.
Yeah, I'll wrap this up. This is another one we just finished. So just give you kind of this different scope of properties. This is the proposed townhouse-style development that we have planned right now. Again, I think focusing more on the type of construction and whether you like the finishes, the colors, those things are all, of course, something that can be changed and worked through. We had a lot of people involved in this on the staff side and our office and our architecture firm, and really we were just trying to get the real scale and size and what it would be. And finishes, they went through a variety of steps. And I will say the staff in Urbana was great to work with, have been even, when we worked on the Nevada project, really great to work with, very receptive. And really, I would tell you, thinking about the community in really every step we've been doing. Obviously, we're trying not to be controversial or build something that is upsetting to people. But I will tell you, think more in your comments about, do you like townhomes? And then we certainly feel like we can take your comments and work with finishes. We are not opposed to doing this as a standard apartment complex, whether it would likely be a 3-story type product. It would be different, but that is not out of the realm for us. We are, like I said, this is the beginning stages of a process. And I know there was some comments. I'll just kind of go through a couple of these, give you some views. It is real difficult. We've got our architect here. When you're doing these, to get what it's going to look like and feel like is hard when you're not, this is not a final rendering. This is just kind of showing massing of buildings and colors on them. So again, we put some products out in the entryway, some of this smart siding that you can feel and look at, give you more of an idea what this stuff might look like. It really can be any color. I think the goal when we talked to staff was, let's don't have this be a bland, beige or gray apartment like a lot of the stuff we've put up and other people have put up that's a standard color. We're open to really a variety of things on that. So please don't feel, in your comments, please put what you think would be a good fit if you have any ideas. We're open to them. Again, just a couple of views. I do not have an aerial view of this yet. We will by the time we get to the final, kind of so you can see it from the top. This is kind of the layout. Like I talked about, there would be an entrance off of the Urbana Street side, and you would go into the complex there. And a lot of our goal is to make wide sidewalks as well, so you could, if you're in the neighborhood, you could walk all the way through and have a nice, lighted path through there, and residents, same thing. And then parking would be not coming off onto Vine Street, causing any more traffic congestion than probably that's already there, in the morning hours and things. So just to kind of show you, this is not final renderings. We did have other color choices. We have 1 million of these. We went back and forth, different. The goal also was not to make it a flat surface. Try to have as much undulation and things going on within reason on a 6 or 8 unit building. You'd only have so much space to make that work. So that just gives you an idea of some different colors. Like I said, colors and stone and brick colors and things are up for change if that's what people think. And if we get a lot of feedback on that, we certainly will come back with some different ideas. So that's kind of wraps up a little bit about us, a little bit about the project. I think Carol's going to set things up for some Q&A, and
Yes.
we'll go from there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, now we're ready to start our Q&A, and I just want to remind you of 2 things that Chris said that I think are going to be really important. One is this is still conceptual, so if you give us real detailed suggestions, that's a little hard to take in at this point. And also, if you could make your suggestions constructive, something that if the architect hears it, they can actually do something with it. So if you just go, I don't like blue, that's not helpful because he doesn't know what you do like. So give us constructive feedback. That would be wonderful. Since we are taping this, I would ask you to not start speaking your question until I come up to you and hand you the mic or hold the mic for you. And I would ask everyone as you begin your question or comment that you state your name and what neighborhood you live in. So in order to make sure that everybody gets a fair turn, John Schneider over there is going to be keeping the clock. And so just keep an eye on that, and we'll try to give everybody a shot at 3 minutes, and then if people want another round that have already spoken, we'll go around again. So who would like to begin? Yes, ma'am.
I'm asking a question for somebody else. I'd like to know if any of the bedrooms are going to be rented individually, or is this actually going to be treated like a single family?
Yeah, we have no intent of renting these bedroom by bedroom, nor do we think that will be something successful here. We're setting them up as a single lease, a joint lease with a couple, a single. We do find, amazingly, a lot of our 2 bedrooms are rented by one person. That that he likes the extra room for visitors, a family. So yeah, we don't intend to lease these room by room at all. We've got one project we do that on. That's Capstone Quarters on North Lincoln. We've run that for the last 10 years, and we do have bedroom by bedroom. But we also like to lease when you come as a group of 4. That is a bonus. We'd prefer to lease to one group on really everything.
Who's next? I know you're being so good. You're putting your comments down on paper and all that.
Margaret Miller. I live in the historic East Urbana neighborhood. So this has 4 sides, and I'm interested in all 4 faces.
Yeah.
And also where the garbage is going to be.
Sure. Yeah, all the sides will look like the renderings you see. The plan would be to have everything facing out. So the garages and the back of the units are on the inside, and you really have a front like you would on a single-family home as you go by. So all 4 sides, nobody on any side's going to get the back end of a building. The plan is to make it look, kind of have all these facing out to the street side, and yeah, they're going to look just like this. Like I said, I apologize for not having we didn't get a chance to do an aerial photo so you could kind of see it from the top, but they'll all be front-facing or street-facing. And the trash, I believe, I've got an architect here. We would put that inside the development so you can pull in and get that. It'll be enclosed. A lot of the codes and rules anymore on apartment building, we're used to putting these in pretty elaborate trash, areas. They've got usually really nice finishes. In fact, at the Carl project, they're behind garage doors. So it'll be enclosed and not in view.
I'll be back. Name and neighborhood.
Ray DeLito, and I'm also in historic East Urbana. So it's not really clear on the plan view, and I know that this isn't, an exact rendition.
Sure.
But how far back from the sidewalk do you plan on putting these? So on all sides, it may be possibly except for facing Vine, within our neighborhood, the buildings do not sit on the sidewalk. There's green space.
Sure.
And some of them, sometimes substantial green space,
Yeah.
and room for like real trees, not ornamental
Sure.
trees.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how, because if you're right on the sidewalk, that's not going to interact with the rest of our neighborhood very well.
Yeah, I agree.
It's really going to stand out, and I want to be able to walk through that and feel like I'm still in my neighborhood.
Absolutely. I think I just looked at a building, an existing building in Bloomington Normal to buy. Somebody called me and said, I want you to look at this building, and it was all parking lot. It was really ugly. And I think, we want some green space. I believe in our renderings we show some setback there from the sidewalk. Again, this is conceptual, but we're going to go out of our way to give it more of a green space in front of them and not be all the way up to the sidewalk. I believe in this RFP there wasn't specific setback language, but we want to set them back off the street and still be able to fit everything in behind it. We've got a good sized lot. This is almost 2 acres, which is, we've built buildings this last year on a 5,000 square foot lot. So this is like heaven, having all this space. So we feel like we can set things back, give you some green space, give you some trees. Like we did in Nevada, we would try to, if there's trees that are there now, and I know there's a few, we would try to maintain them and not take them out if we don't have to, and fit it in. Keep them.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of things.
Name and neighborhood.
Cynthia Hoyle, I'm in Southeast Urbana, and I would love to see some owner-occupied units mixed in. If that's not a possibility for this development, I would love to see that happen in the future. We have a really high ratio of rental to owner-occupied, and so having that mixed in would be a nice option. The other thing I would like to encourage you to do is provide interior protected bike parking. People who rent often, especially since these folks are less likely to be owning multiple vehicles, have bikes, and being able to not have to carry them in and out of units, have a place where they can be parked and visitors can park that provides some protection from the elements would be a real asset.
Yeah, bike parking's huge, and I'm sure it's a requirement in Urbana. I'm not sure what the bike requirements are, but in Champaign, Josh, how many spaces do we have at Carlton Fields? 56 apartments, 60 bike spaces. They are enclosed. We have them actually inside of the lobby, and they're in a room. Obviously, these have the garages, which is an unbelievable benefit on half the units or close to half. So I think a lot of people will take advantage of putting their bike in the garage. But any bike parking we have would be interior, an area of this interior section, so you don't see it from the street. So there's not bikes everywhere. But yeah, I know that. Yeah, we're expecting this to be very walkable, bikeable, busable. That you may be able to move there, like we see in a lot of developments here, without a vehicle and be able to get by just fine. And that's, I think that's a trend we're seeing in the apartment business with parking, need for parking. It's definitely reducing, even in our stuff that's off of campus. We see the same thing.
Do you want to give any thoughts about the owner-occupied?
Yeah, so the challenge with owner-occupied is certainly thought of these as condos from the very beginning. We likely can pen these separately so they have the ability to do that. Once you go down that route, let's say that we put them out for sale and built them, and 3 of them sold, it creates a real messy situation with financing with banks, because they look at it as a mostly rental community. And I know that we've actually taken over a project. It's in Urbana, that's the Country Club Apartments that we now call University Park, that were converted to 108 condo units. And I have, over a 5-year period, bought them all back to make them apartments, because it was a nightmare. They were sold to investors out of town, out of state, and they had shootings out there and everything else. We are now put $1 million into it. We're now stable. I own them all. It took me, I bought some for $1,500 a piece, and I bought the last ones for $75 a piece. So I got everybody out, and we own them all. And I think we just are fearful that might be an option, because I think that's something that we want to have the ability to do. And that's really just a matter of setting it up on the front end. They're going to be separately metered. They could be separately pinned. And that'd be great. We'd love to sell them off and be able to do that. I think condos just have become super difficult to finance in some cases, unless you're paying cash, which most people aren't. So.
Okay, thank you. Who's next? Name your neighborhood.
I'm Tracy Satterthwaite, and I'm also in the historic East Urbana neighborhood. A couple of things. First of all, I'm very concerned about the quality of building and making sure that this is a building that is going to last a long time. The last thing we want is something that is built and 20 years later is looking shabby and needing to come down. The other thing that I do have is a question about traffic patterns. You said something about the traffic coming in and out of there on Urbana Street. Living just 2 blocks away from there, I am concerned because it's very difficult to get out on the Green Street side, and probably on Elm Street as well, onto Vine Street, unless you're going north. If you're trying to go south, it's very difficult to get out there. So people are going to learn to go through the neighborhood and find other ways to get out onto the street. And so I'm concerned about the amount of traffic through the rest of the neighborhood. Is there any talk about how that can be dealt with?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking right now, we've got it proposed, like I said, with 1 entrance, 1 exit, not going out into the main thoroughfare so people don't get backed up on Vine Street. Certainly we'll look at that. I think we have found in the apartment world that I think there's always this fear that everybody at the exact same time is getting in their car like we do and go to work, and it's like this crazy morning rush. And I think we find that people in apartments kind of go all over at different times throughout the day. So I don't anticipate 90 vehicles, exiting at 7:45 every morning. We like having the interior thing. We like, again, the walkability of this particular project, thinking that traffic will be less here than maybe other places, with the idea that you can literally walk to a lot of places, bike, bus, and you don't need to rely on that vehicle to drive from here and park in front of Crane Alley and go in to have dinner. So I think that part's like the most attractive part. As far as materials go, it's really hard to explain to people the standards that construction requires now on finishes and efficiencies and building materials. John over here, who's heads the planning side of things, can tell you we can't just slap up buildings and not meet standards. These buildings will require blower door tests to test efficiency at the end. Certain insulating windows have to meet certain standards. I mean, I think we're building them, today as well as ever before. They're very tight. The Nevada building checked off the, off the charts on the efficiency of that building. I think it's got a check below 5 on the blower door test, where they bring in a machine and check the efficiency of the building. It was in the 1s, which is lower than anything we've ever had. So I don't know where Carl tested, but it was low. Nevada was the same thing. I think we'll build a very quality product. It's going to be here a long, long time. We have no benefit to build something that's going to last 15 or 20 years. We want it to last a long time. This products that we're proposing don't require you to paint. That's one of the beauties of it. It's got a guaranteed finish on it. You can go 30 years on the warranty without having to go out there and manually paint it. And one of the attractive pieces of it.
Chen Shi Yu, and I'm from West Urbana neighborhood. I notice a lot of times when they put on apartment buildings, on the front side they will use really nice material, and now on the back side it's just ugly vinyl siding. So I was wondering, for this project, are you intend to make all sides of the building the same material, or there going to be differentiation of the facade material for different sides?
Yeah, to answer your question, we're not going to use vinyl products on this. I think that was most of the question. But yeah, we'll do a mix of stuff. And remember, I don't put vinyl on anything because we don't love brick. We love brick. We love to put it on everything. It runs in about $30 a square foot to put it on, which is about 20 more than having your kitchen backsplash done, to give you a perspective. And it's about $27 more a foot than vinyl siding. This product that we're using runs around $18 a foot. It's very expensive. In fact, so expensive I've been crying about it on another project that we're doing right now, and it's the primary material. So I think the materials are really, really good. It's very similar to a hardy board. Hardy board's about the same price. Hardy board is a cement board. In my opinion, it doesn't look as good because you have to go and you have to fill all the holes and paint it. And a lot of times you can see that when you get in the right light, where all those holes were filled and painted over, and it also is a product that I don't think holds up as well in our winter conditions, with it being a cement board product. So we like this material. I think it looks great. And if you get a chance to go by 809 Nevada, that building is 85% brick, but the back of it is got the same material that we're proposing on it. I think it looks, and it's the larger. It's got different lap sizes. You can do a 4-inch, I think an 8-inch and a 10-inch, and we've got a larger lap siding on there. It looks really, really sharp, and I think it's all hidden too. So all your nail holes and things are hidden, and it looks like a quality finished product when it's done.
Yeah, sorry. I guess to sum up, I think I agree with you.
Yeah.
Brick is too expensive,
Yeah.
vinyl is too cheap, and the option, I saw that one on Nevada. I like it. The only comment I want to make is that I want to, it doesn't have to be uniformly all sides of the building has the same material, but they have to have certain quality feeling. Not one side feels higher quality, the other side feels just inferior.
Yeah, I think we'll use good products all the way around. Again, we're always fighting when we do these projects, you lay it out, you do your financial projections, and then you work into kind of what you can do and make financial sense. So ultimately, I'm not going to promise, the world up here, because in the end, it really has to work financially for us, and without taking the rents to a level that we can't achieve. So we want it to be both as nice as we can possibly make it, but also it's got to work in the end and pencil out to a number and be able to sustain itself. And the bank's got to be happy, and all the things that go into financing the project.
Okay, who's next? Name and neighborhood.
Christine Graves. I live on South Urbana Avenue. I'm concerned about green space for the tenants that actually live in the project.
Sure.
It said in the description that you were interested in renting to empty nesters and young families, and I wonder if these people will have somewhere to go outside and have a picnic
Sure.
and enjoying the property themselves. From the drawing, it looks like it's a fortress with a parking lot in the middle, and it doesn't seem like a place that lots of people would want to live.
Sure. Yeah, good question. Obviously, we're fighting two things: have an adequate parking and restricted amount of space. Get enough apartments there to make it viable still. Yeah, but I anticipate some landscaping on the inside as well with trees, tree grates, things like that. But I believe there's still a lot of walkable areas. You know, there's parks in Urbana. I think that's an important feature when you can have it, when it works out great. Certainly like to have as much grass and open space as we can get away with, but we really are maximizing this site and trying to get parking and things like that in there. But we certainly are taking into consideration green space and landscaping and not making it feel like a big concrete open space where there's nothing beautiful about it on the inside too. So definitely going to consider that when we get to our final designs.
Other questions? Okay.
Yeah, Alice Engelbrecht, and I live in East Urbana, HUNA. The one thing I'd like to know is what kind of energy efficiency facilities will you have in this development?
Sure.
I think that's very important to reduce our energy sources here.
Yeah, from the very beginning, I know that was a goal for the city and something that we have not done any solar projects yet. I know they're really popular right now. They're going up in a variety of places. We do have a meeting set up as part of this. It doesn't show in our renderings. We didn't want to put something out there that we can't achieve, but it's certainly a goal. If we're talking about using the solar side of things, then I think the building materials, we're always considering the most efficient type of building. I think the materials we're using on the siding is a good example of something that is, it's a wood product. It's it's got a recycled nature, something they use in it. It's a good product. So, but yeah, the solar thing is, I think, our focus. We're going to look at it. We've got meetings set up to meet with representatives that would give us kind of all the information about how that would work, how we would design the buildings to put some of those features in, what they would do, what they cost. All of that information we should have here shortly, and something we're definitely considering in the project.
Mr. Dossett? I'll hold it for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can't see him. Hi, my name is Scott Dossett, and I really dislike this preliminary design you've got here. Sure. And I know that you're in a rough position to think about the transition to the residential neighborhood from the city core. But I think you've gone way too residential. The multi-planar, shed roof, faceted front just seems to me to totally reject the aesthetic of downtown Urbana, and I don't like that building.
Sure. Yeah.
The Carl at the Fields building, the one on West Nevada, I really, really appreciated actually you going through those other projects because they exhibited a diversity in architecture that interested me more in the project. In that context, you've won me over a little bit.
Sure.
I was the guy who freaked out about the blue and was quoted as calling it the nightmare scenario
Yeah, sure.
in the
It's all
News
good.
Gazette.
Yeah.
We've been advocating for the condition and the livability and the functionality of this neighborhood for 20 years as residents. And so my suggestion would be to try to, I think I heard you say neighborhood meeting, to try to do that and to really challenge yourself about the architectural components that you use in a way that is more respectful to the federal courthouse, to a historic building downtown, the county courthouse. and even to Lincoln Square, which I hope we get to keep with the brick facade. So I'm going to rapidly disagree that this can't be a brick building. And something that's like a nouveau federal style, I think, could really be beautiful, be attractive to people that want to live in downtown, and yet still reflect that aesthetic, and be friendly to the people that are in the neighborhood. The townhome concept, the general size and the massing of the building, I think you're really in a sweet spot with that. So I congratulate you on that work.
Cool, thanks, good feedback. Yeah, please put those comments in writing if you could, or email them just to get your feedback. Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, we're at the preliminary stage. That's what this meeting is, you know, to get the neighbors involved. And I think we'd be concerned if nobody showed up. And we've been to several of these before in other markets where people don't show up. So we want to be where people care, you know, obviously. And it's obvious that everybody does. And we want the same. I think in the end, we want the same thing everybody else wants. We're not going to make every single resident happy. Somebody's going to like parts of it. I think my goal leaving here is the actual massing and the concept of a townhouse style more favorable than apartments. And if we can get comments on that in the writing, I think we can go and our architects, to give them fair credit, did not have a lot of time. You know, we're not into full plans yet. We're only in the letter of intent stage. A letter of intent is not a binding contract, as a lot of people know, and we really need this feedback to come back with something that's more final. And the renderings, we'll spend more time on those and try to incorporate some of these features. It is always a difficult thing when you're trying to figure out what goes with what. Some people are opposed to. We tried this on Nevada and Lincoln to kind of match the university buildings on the other side of the street, and had backlash on that. So it's always difficult to kind of pick what you pick as buildings or brick color, but we are aware of that and certainly want to make sure this transitions into the neighborhood as well as we can get away with doing and fit in. Thanks for the comments.
Anyone else?
Jody Murphy, East Urbana as well. And while I can appreciate that from your standpoint, 40-plus units coming in is very low density, to someone who moved to the neighborhood to have a neighborhood and liked the vibe that was there,
sure,
that looks incredibly dense. And then what I'm hearing is that the primary concern for us being here is to say whether we want brick or a wood-type product and whether it's blue or tan. I would argue more for it being lower density, sure, to keep that neighborhood vibe, because that filters out into the rest of us who are a mere 2 or 3 blocks away.
Yep. Yeah, I think all comments are open, whether it's just finishes or not. I think we've heard the most about the finishes, and I'm trying to avoid people to just focus on the way the rendering looks, because it's certainly not the final product. But yeah, the density is always a fine line. Again, I think this comes back to the cost of construction and how it pencils out math-wise. Can we do something really small there and still make the numbers work? And it becomes difficult. So I think obviously this is a much smaller scaled-down version than the previous 200-plus units and a 190 down to 42. This project, I think, went from 80 million. The second proposal was 30 million. We're proposing a $5 to $7 million project here. But I hear you on density and having more apartments. And the good news is I don't think there's not been a lot of apartment additions in the neighborhood. I think it's been mostly, a lot of them are single-family homes, and we're trying to get this to be as much like residential as we can get away with, and not have 3 individual floors of apartments, have one unit that is feels like more of a home than a apartment complex.
Yeah, this is Ann Clements. I live down here on Vine Street. This is going to be a tricky question, and I don't want to try to pin you down more than you're comfortable with. But with all of this juggling of trying to get the numbers to work out, what's your target rental range? I mean, are you aiming for mid-range, high range, and also knowing that the rental market is going nuts right now?
Yeah, great question. We are trying to, when you build new, it's expensive, and that's why these prices on a lot of the new construction projects are expensive. It's not because we're just randomly picking numbers. To make the numbers work, the rates are going to have to be higher. Our goal in all our new construction, as out-of-town developers come in and build a lot of stuff, we've built a lot of boutique-style infill stuff on really, other than the Carl at the Fields project, that's been all our projects. They've been single lot, double lot, you know, in the case of Nevada, 3 or 4 properties together, and like this one, an infill opportunity. We're always fighting what we can get away with renting them for and making the, you know, we've got to meet certain requirements for the bank. I would expect these to be in, you know, in the upper echelon of the market, but below the highest rental stuff. So they're going to be kind of mid-range on new is my hope. And again, that comes down to, we need the finishes, the materials to be the right materials to get those numbers. You can't just put an inferior product out and then expect to get top market rents. So we have that in the back of our minds. I can't throw an exact number out, but a lot of our new stuff rents anywhere from $1.25 a square foot up to even $2 a square foot. Across in the Champaign Library, we're getting $2 a square foot, and that's mostly because our one bedrooms are 550 square feet and they're renting around $1,100. So that's a tip top. Carl at the Fields is around $1.75 a foot for those. So I think these will be more in the $125 to $150 a foot range. They're different. We got a couple different floor plans, different styles. Some have garages, some don't. But we feel confident on the leasing side that this is something that's going to be very, very desirable because it's different and it's in a great location.
Anyone else?
I don't know if we're allowed to ask a second time. Would you ever think of having the live-work spaces that are very common in some cities? I think that might be real appropriate, especially along the Vine Street side.
Yeah, I think you know, we've looked at that concept before. I think it's just we kind of saw this more as straight residential, especially if we were going to do this as a different construction type, it might be an option. I just think the way we're designing these with, you know, 3 stories and garages underneath, and somebody certainly could, I don't know what the zoning is on whether you can run a business out of here at the end too and have kind of both, but we certainly are open to that. I like that concept of that, yeah. Just don't know if it's the right fit for what we've put out there, but.
Tegan O'Brien, I'm in Historic East Urbana. I was wondering if you had discussed easements with the city and the Arborist Department. I know Urbana is the city of trees, and we love our very old trees, so I think having trees that the city maintains right up against the street to both protect the buildings, the people underneath, I think is an important thing to consider. Green space is important, but also providing a buffer to streets. If there are kids there, they might be riding their bikes on the sidewalk. The increased traffic on Devine is going to be a consideration to factor in, especially if they're young kids. So maybe work with the city, or if you have talked to them already, consider working with the Arborist Department as well to sort of create that easement and maybe set the sidewalk back a little bit.
Yeah, we're certainly planning on, that's kind of the next part of where we're going with, you know, going into more of a, once we get kind of a final, the steps are, there's several steps still involved, including coming to kind of a final plan and then getting the council to approve it, because right now it's a letter of intent, it has to get approved. And that will determine, once we have that step done, we will then go into more of the meat of the project. And we work closely with the arborists on the 809 Nevada project to try to save that giant tree in the corner. And so, you know, we were successful doing that. And something we want to, it's, you know, landscaping, and you can't take new trees and make them look like ones that have been there for 30, 40 years. We want that look and feel. So we're certainly going to take all that into consideration. Our architects are aware of that as well.
I'm Ilona Matkowski. I live in East Urbana. My primary concern with this development project is with the aesthetics of the design you are proposing. When I first saw this design, I thought it was absolutely awful. I feel that the the group of buildings looks like the absolute cheapest buildings students housing buildings in the campus area. Now, this is my personal opinion, but I know a lot of people had the exact same reaction, even though so far only Scott Dossett has spoken to this. But whatever our aesthetics are, the real question here is how does this project fit into the existing texture of downtown, buildings texture and spatial texture of downtown Urbana. I suggest that it does not fit into any degree whatsoever. The colors, the materials, the massing, the texture, the surroundings, the spatial surroundings of the buildings, nothing fits into downtown Urbana. Why is it important? This spot is in the very center of this town. It's not only the very center, but it's in the very oldest part of this town. This spot where you planned this building, it was part of the original town of Urbana, which was established in 1833. It's the oldest part of Urbana. I suggest that this spot, because of its location and its history, deserves much more serious consideration for what kind of building is placed here. This building, this design shows blatant disregard for this environment. This building needs to fit into what surrounds it in downtown Urbana. Buildings don't exist by themselves in urban areas. Buildings, just like people in urban areas, exist in a society of other buildings, in groups of other buildings. And they should show respect for their surroundings, just like humans have to show respect for their surroundings. I suggest further that because this spot is a huge area, it's an entire block, even though you said you have a shortage of space, it's a gigantic area. So whatever you build,
I'm going to have to call time on you,
Can
and
I finish one sentence?
I would ask you to put the rest of the comments in writing. Okay? Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
appreciate all that in writing would help us. I'd really like to know what you would like to see there and what materials, and point out particular buildings that you think it should look like. Those would be helpful in our process. So thank you for your feedback.
Anyone else? It's almost time to go on the bus, and the bus is here if we're ready to go. We have about 5 more minutes.
Can I maybe finish? You said we can have 2 rounds?
Sure.
I would like to finish because I do have suggestions.
Sure.
So what I would suggest is take into account what surrounds this building in its immediate area and in downtown, and create an image that fits into it. What surrounds it? Brick buildings, red brick buildings with white stone, historic styles, large trees surrounding them, and nice, smaller massing than this building. And I think the bottom line is we have to decide what kind of image we want to project of Urbana, and this is to the city of Urbana, not particularly to you. Is this the image we want to project of Urbana, or do we want to project a much more serious and valuable image of valuable architecture and architectural and spatial design than this image? This continues a very bad trend that started about 60 years ago of incompatible buildings that don't look anything like the existing fabric of downtown. And because of this, this downtown has no image. It's a downtown of helter-skelter buildings, modern buildings, and the destruction of the existing very nice historic fabric. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we're going to have that be the last word. So the bus is parked on Urbana Avenue at around Green. And if you plan to take the bus, we have room for, I think, about 40 or 45 people on the bus. And if everybody doesn't fit, we can make another trip. But if you're interested in taking the tour, just head into the lobby and you'll be directed to the bus.
We'll have staff there as well. Reminder too, we're just going to go into one of the apartments, so
Yeah.
it's going to be a little tight. You know, these are much different designs. So.